Welcome to the Hud Grad Club. I'm Chris Webb, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Career Consultant with the University of Huddersfield's Careers Employability Service. And, full disclosure, I'm also a University of Huddersfield graduate. So I've generally got pretty positive things to say about both the institution and any of our graduates. But don't take my word for it. In this podcast, we'll be meeting different members of the University of Huddersfield's global alumni community, finding out what makes them tick, about their experiences during their time at the university and their career journeys since completing their studies. Join us as we explore the inspiring, innovative and diverse range of individuals that make up the Hud Grad Club. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hud Grad Club, our podcast celebrating the University of Huddersfield alumni community. And Roger, a very warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Fantastic. Well, for anyone who's kind of not met you before, not come across you before online, can you tell us a little bit more about your time at the university, or what you studied more specifically, and what you're up to now?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, looking forward to it. So I started at it was Huddersfield Polytechnic when I started. So it was back in 1987 when I started at Huddersfield Polytechnic, and I graduated in 1991 when it had become the University of Huddersfield. And I had the qualification that I did was a BA Business Studies, or the BABS course for short, as it may still be known now. And just to give you some insight, the current occupation that I have is I'm the head of service for the Matrix Standard, which Chris has interviewed me about previously. And the Matrix Standard is the Department for Education standard for information, advice and guidance services, making sure that people, recipients of services, get the right advice and guidance in life to get where they need to be. And I'm also the head of service for what's known as the Trusted Standard, which belongs to the National Council for Voluntary Organisations, and it's a standard that charities and voluntary organisations aspire to. And I'm employed by the Growth Company in Manchester.
So I know we're going to kind of dig into a little bit more to some of the stuff you've mentioned already around your time at the university and your kind of career journey so far as we move through the podcast. But we start every episode, as always, with our greatest Hud story section. So an opportunity really to find out a little bit more about your time at the university. And I guess a good starting point is, what sort of brought you to Huddersfield, to the BABS course in the first place?
Yeah, I think the thing that brought me there was the reputation. It had a leading reputation. Also, it was very modern. But when I came, the whole campus was brand spanking new, and that was really appealing. And it also had, as I say, a great reputation and some great people delivering the course. So that's what brought me there. And also in terms of where I came from, I was studying at Peel College, which was in Bury. I did A levels. Wasn't sure what to do at the end of the A levels, and I have to say I was impressed on the visits to the University of Huddersfield that it was going to be the right course for me, and I felt well supported as well coming across to the University of Huddersfield.
Fantastic. And you mentioned obviously that you saw the University of Huddersfield through from its kind of status as a polytechnic through to, as you finished it, becoming a university. Any kind of particular special memories, I guess, of your time at the university?
Yes, I suppose you mentioned about some great stories to tell. I mean, I've got so many that I could say, but I think in terms of this broadcast, I mean, one of the great things that we did was what was termed a field trip, and we went to the Lake District for that particular trip, and we worked on a project for Chrysalis Records. So the university had got those links with industry, they got the links with Chrysalis Records, and the record company were looking at their business strategy and future direction, and what they wanted to do was use the students on the BABS course as a bit of a think tank to generate ideas. So we had lots of projects and things to work on, looking at what they did, all of what the record label was involved in, and making some recommendations. So we did lots of blue sky thinking. It was great for our skills as well, because we got the opportunity to do presentations and put forward our ideas. And also there was quite a lot of fun activities to do surrounding it. So we did things like a treasure hunt where we went around Windermere and the surrounding areas. I seem to remember on the treasure hunt, we booked some taxis to try and cover the ground quicker to beat some of the other teams. And if you think about when it was back in the late 80s, we didn't have mobile phones in those days, so we're having to go to phone boxes with coins and dialing up taxis to see if they could take us to where we needed to get to on this field trip. So it was really good fun. And then in the evenings, because we were working for Chrysalis Records, they would be playing some of the artists that were signed to Chrysalis. And I remember one of those artists was the Proclaimers. I have to say, I'm not a great fan of the Proclaimers, but I remember we all joined in and we were all singing, we will walk 500 miles as part of the evening entertainment. So it was really good. It was really good fun. Needless to say, remember as well, this was in the days before the internet and streaming. None of us actually predicted the rise of the internet and streaming. And sadly, Chrysalis Records disappeared in 2005. Anyway, it was a great experience. Also, while I was at University of Huddersfield, there was this great rise in dance music at the time. I don't know if people or some of your students may have looked into it, but there was what was called the Second Summer of Love in 1988 and 89, and the whole kind of music scene within the university was changing. So there'd been quite an alternative scene, quite a lot of goth type music as it was described at the time, and what we saw was this sort of house music and alternative dance music sort of rising, and it was such a vibrant time to be in the university and go out to go to the student union and listen to this music and see things changing.
Wow, fantastic! Brilliant memories. I mean, you've recalled an awful lot there. I think much more than I could probably recall. But that sounds, like a great experience. And as you say, I guess a lot of the time when we've had kind of guests on the podcast, they have talked about that kind of wider holistic experience of university beyond the course. But I guess for you as well, I think this is something we'll kind of pick up when we talk a bit about your career journey. But I think you mentioned previously that actually, I guess the placement component of your degree as well was quite impactful, I suppose, on kind of the start of your career. Tell us a little bit more about
exactly. That. One of the strengths that I've always seen in the university is that collaboration with industry. And I mentioned before about Chrysalis Records, but also the sandwich element was a key attraction to the BABS course as well. So the university helped organise a 12-month placement, and I worked with ICI, which has got a plant in Huddersfield. I don't know if it still has, but it was the Colours and Fine Chemicals plant that was on Leeds Road, and the role that I had there was in the accounts department, supporting accounts and working on management accounts. I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I got a lot of responsibility. I got to travel the country in that role, and even arranged car hire for me to get to different places for those meetings. And they also hired a Ford Granada with a 3-litre injection engine car for me, which was absolutely brilliant. And I was only sort of 21 at the time when all of that was arranged for me. The other things about the course that I really liked was the fact that you could specialize, because business studies is such a broad area. As you get more into the qualification, you can decide which modules and things you want to concentrate on. So towards the end of the course, I realized that accounts wasn't for me. I suppose that was one of the great things about the placement. Although I liked it, I thought accounts was a bit boring and not really kind of my thing. So I concentrated more on the people management and marketing courses for the final year. And I have to say, the quality of the teaching was excellent, and especially in terms of the marketing, much of that has stayed with me throughout my career.
That's brilliant. And I mean, as you say, I think it's one of those things we commonly hear about business studies degrees. It's so broad, where might you go with it? So as you say, those opportunities to kind of test and experiment through placements, collaborations with industry, work out the bits you like, the bits you don't like so much, hugely valuable. And I guess that leads really nicely on to talking a bit more about your career journey. So you mentioned there obviously the opportunity that you had whilst you're at university, you're working out the bits you liked, bits you didn't like so much, kind of within the course and within the general sort of subject area. What did that sort of lead to then? What was that experience like, kind of leaving university, and how did it sort of lead to where you are now?
Yeah, it was it was great because for those job interviews, I was able to talk about the experience and the work that we'd done within industry, which was great. I did find, because I got that experience in accounts and there was a recession at the time, it was easier to get a job in accounts. So I went into a car dealership and worked on their management accounts. But at the same time, I was scanning the horizon and looking for something that I wanted to do. And I saw that there was a role at the Training and Enterprise Council. The Training and Enterprise Councils were a network of government organisations, and they were looking for a business advisor. And I thought how perfect I could use the whole variety of skills that I picked up on the course in that business advisor role. And I was involved initially in an area called the Business Growth Programme, which meant that I was out visiting organisations and talking to them about the support that they needed, and organising that support, putting them in touch with people that could organise consultancy for them to help them grow their business, and also looking at the training that they needed for the workforce. That was a fantastic experience. At the same time, the government launched what was called the Investors in People standard, which was all a good practice, all tied in with the modules that I'd learned at the university. And I was keen to work with that initiative and that assessment process. And we developed that in the area in which I worked. And in fact, that grew so much that the managing director of the tech, the local tech, was looked for two of us, myself and a colleague, and we both set up a separate spin-off company to handle the Investors in People assessments, and we collaborated with other techs in the region and created an assessment body, and that's really helped sort of propel my career forward. And I still work for that same assessment body over 30 years later.
I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, tell us a little bit more about that then, because one of the things that we often kind of talk about on the podcast is around sort of people who've kind of changed careers, who maybe kind of taken switchbacks, work for a number of different organisations, and I guess sort of emphasising that that's okay. But of course, it's also completely okay to be kind of, as you said, based within a similar field or a similar organisation, or working with a similar body, throughout your career. There's still that opportunity for the diversity and variety and all those sort of things. So I know you're going to talk a little bit more about that in your kind of underrated careers advice section, but I guess, tell us a bit more about that. The 30-year career you had, and sort of what some of the, I guess, key moments were within that, and some of the different experiences that you were able to have there.
I think one of the key moments was the managing director of the tech. The tech employed about 150, 160 people, and we were on a small team within the tech, and the managing director played a key role and nurtured us, and in many ways he was a mentor to us, and that had a great impact on myself and my colleague. And he trusted us to go to set up this spin-off business, and the tech that we worked for became one of the shareholders. He joined the board, and also encouraged a number of other techs to form part of the board. And initially there was just the two of us that were working for the company, and we grew it steadily over a number of years, and sort of about 10 years later there was close to 30 people working for this organization, and we were delivering a much wider range of services. So as I say, we started with Investors in People, but I also with colleagues looked at other opportunities, and we became an assessment body for the ISO 9000 standards. We worked with the Law Society and became an assessment body for their Lexel standard. We worked with the government as well, and delivered their customer service excellence assessment program as well. So this small organization that started with a couple of us grew to be a much bigger thing, of which I'm a part today.
And am I right in saying that's kind of taken you beyond the UK as well, to some international?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I've been absolutely so privileged to do international work with this organisation. and it's taken me to the likes of Poland, Finland, the United States of America, the Cayman Islands. That was a fantastic piece of work where I was doing assessments over there for organisations such as KPMG. I've worked in Austria, France, and in addition to the assessment work, we've also looked at consultancy to support organisations, and this is as well involved me in some really sort of key projects looking at how to create high performance cultures in organisations. I've also been really passionate about well-being and become qualified as a mental health first aid instructor as well within the organisation.
So it's given you, as you said, huge number of opportunities, almost as you said, growing from that, that initial small shoots. I mean, you mentioned there a little bit about the managing director and kind of that sort of almost mentoring relationship that really sort of helped you develop in your career. Are there any other kind of key figures, I guess, that have been, a big part of your career journey during that time?
Yeah, I think a lot of the work that we're involved in the delivery of involves the network, and we work with lots of associates that aren't employed by the business, but we have the privilege to work with them, and many of them I would regard as being, mentors and gurus, and they've been so kind of important to me. They've introduced me to ideas. They've shared they've shared with me as well the things that they're researching and looking at, which has inspired me.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of those things where sometimes we don't always acknowledge it, do we? We always maybe kind of focus, or we often tend to focus on maybe people who are senior to us as important figures. But as you say, there's people sometimes working within your network, offering different things, but maybe in a similar position. I think perhaps we don't always acknowledge the benefit that can have. So it's a really good example, because I think as well, sometimes with networking, we've heard it in a couple of previous podcasts, there's that sort of slightly daunting sense of what networking can be, rather than just that ability of building connections with people who work in a similar industry or have kind of things to share in your profession or kind of in your sphere of work. So really interesting to hear that.
The other thing, Chris, that was interesting was just keeping my sort of academic development moving forward after I'd left the university. So I returned to the university after I'd finished to do evening courses, and I was pleased to qualify with to become a member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. So I did that after I left, and that also kind of helped manage that transition into work and still being in touch with the university.
And I think, you mentioned sort of previously, in addition to, I guess, the work that you have done, you've also been involved in kind of self-employment as well. And is that something that, I guess, the university or experience at the university was helpful with, or did that kind of come about from sort of different experiences when it came to kind of starting your own business?
I think it just provided a fantastic grounding into the mechanics of an organization and how it operates. Thinking about that business that we were involved in, setting up it, we got all of the insight through the program about the importance of how to set up a business, the fact that you need articles of association, memorandums of understanding. So all of these things that we'd studied in practice, we were able to use, which was great.
And was that a very different experience for you, I guess, kind of having worked for as you said, with an organisation for a long period of time? And tell us a bit about the process, I suppose, of setting up your own business and what that was like, I guess, by comparison.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. The business was owned by the Training and Enterprise Council, so we didn't own the business ourselves, but we were working to shareholders, and I have to say the shareholders were super supportive. The two of us that were involved in setting that up, we were both in our early 20s. So it was great to get that level of trust and support, and be able to get things moving. And that business, as I say, we gradually grew it over time, and I'm still there now.
I mean, it must have been a brilliant, as you said, learning experience, because you kind of had almost both of those angles at the same time, as you say, kind of working within an organisation and an organisation that you've developed yourself. So it's fascinating combination.
Also, after I did the CIPD at University of Huddersfield, I wanted to achieve the diploma in marketing as well, because we studied a lot of it on the degree, and I went to Oldham College to do that, just because it was the most straightforward way of doing it at the time, and I was Student of the Year with Oldham College, but I put all of that down to the work that I'd done with the University of Huddersfield. In fact, I didn't go to some of the lectures and things because
probably safe to say that now, yeah.
Because it was just going over old ground that I'd previously studied at Huddersfield, and I was pleased to be their Student of the Year, even though I wasn't super committed. I got all of that, knowledge and understanding from Huddersfield.
Well, they probably won't take it back now, which is good news. Even if they're listening, they hopefully won't take it back. So, I mean, brilliant insights. Thanks, Roger. And yeah, as you said, fascinating kind of to hear about how sort of the careers developed. I know that sort of links quite nicely into your underrated career advice, for the podcast. So let's move on to that. So what I guess are kind of some of the key sort of reflections, insights from your career, and that you feel are really useful to potentially share with any students or graduates who might be watching or listening to the podcast?
I think one of the key things I'd like to share is don't underestimate your own power to be able to carve out your own career with your employer. I think at the moment, looking at the jobs market, there is a tendency for people to move on and go to a different employer, but why not kind of see what opportunities you can build in your existing employer, see if you can find allies, see if you can build networks and be the change yourself, change and modify your job and see where you can go within that organization.
It's such an important point, and we sometimes kind of hear it now, I guess, referred to a little bit as job crafting. That's kind of a very common, like, modern phrase for it. But actually, as you're saying, it's exactly what you've just mentioned. It's that kind of carving out, your own pathway within a particular employer, and as you say, avoiding maybe that tendency that the only option is change, and that change has to be external. So as you were saying, that there are, as you've kind of proved within your career, there's opportunities to kind of build things for yourself while staying within that same organization. So I think it's great to kind of have that reflected, because as you say, it's maybe possibly more of kind of a modern trend for people to change jobs, but possibly not. I mean, I'm always corrected by people about this who say, actually, yeah, there's always been a lot of job changing, but I think it's an important point to make about that ability, I guess, to be able to do that within the organization you're already in. Really appreciate your time today. Really appreciate sharing sort of insights from your career. I mean, if we've got any students, graduates who are watching or listening to this who maybe want to find out a little bit more about your work or get in touch, where's the best place to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So just search Roger Chapman, Matrix Standard. You'll find me on LinkedIn. You can go to our websites. So we've got the matrixstandard.co.uk or trustedstandard.org.uk, or you can email me directly. If you want to email me directly, it's roger.chapman@growthco.uk.
That is fantastic. Thanks, Roger. What we will do is, in the edit of the podcast, so if you're watching this right now, you will see those links flash up on the screen. And if you're listening to us, you'll be able to find them in the podcast notes attached to the episode. So that brings us very, very nicely to the end of the episode. Roger, massive thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our latest member of the Hud Grad Club. And obviously, we wish you well with everything moving forward.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Enjoyed the podcast? Then go to the University of Huddersfield YouTube channel for all of our future episodes. Subscribe, like, and don't forget to hit the bell button for notifications. If you'd like to be involved in the Hud Grad Club podcast moving forward, please get in touch with us on alumni@hud.ac.uk.